This is the Healthcare Marketplace Specialization, Healthcare Marketplace Overview. I'm Steve Parenti, and this is Module 4.2.3, FDA Approval for Medical Devices. So we talked about getting FDA approval for pharmaceuticals in the previous module. Let's talk now about getting approval for medical devices. It's a different process, and there are two common methods by which to do this. The first is what's known as a PMA, for pre-market approval for breakthrough technologies. These are really extraordinary technologies, things like those implantable cardiac defibrillators we've talked about before, essentially the CPR machine in your chest. A more common way is through pre-market notifications, otherwise known as the 510K process for the statute that covers them, and really the rules. These are for more established products. So the FDA receives about 50 to 70 PMAs per year. These are the breakthrough technologies, but 4,000 510Ks per year. The part of the FDA that's responsible for approval is what's known as the Center for Device and Radiological Health. Radiological health because prior to all the cardiac technology, really X-ray technologies was really the core area that was being seen. That agency has been in operation since the 1970s. So there's several steps that are involved to get going, so let's go through those. To get approved, you need to first of all identify what type of class you're going to be in for a medical device. So Class 1 products are the lowest risk and are most often not subject to the pre-market approval before. You may not believe it or not, but say a Band-Aid is a Class 1 device. Even the notion of coming up with a new Band-Aid that might have like a graphic on it from like the latest Star Wars movie to have the BB-8 little drone on it instead, that still gets classified as a Class 1 product. Pretty easy to approve. Class 2 products pose either a low or moderate risk. Most of them are cleared through the 510K process. It is one of the most common ways that a medical device will get cleared through the FDA. Then we get to Class 3 devices. They're much higher in risk. They're usually breakthrough. They're almost always accompanied by a PMA, and they're not similar to previously made products. So once the FDA has this information and one defines whether they're in Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, then they will start assessing them just like they do for drugs. So they're going to examine all the data that goes along with these technologies, and all but the simplest technologies like the tongue depressors, the adhesive strips, are going to basically go to be reviewed, but the easiest ones go out pretty quickly. 30% will fall into Class 1, that's the easiest class. 60% will fall into Class 2, and then 10% for the real breakthrough technologies are going to fall into Class 3. General rule of thumb I use for Class 3 is that if someone is going to be inserted into a person, it's going to stay in that person, that almost likely is a Class 3 technology, unless it really has a proven track record prior to and very clearly defined, and it can fall into Class 2. All devices are subject to general controls which govern marketing, proper labeling, and monitoring performance once the device is on the market. And then some of the radiation-emitting devices face additional standards after that. Keep in mind that just because you get approval doesn't necessarily mean you're out of the woods. You can have a surprise inspection by the FDA to see if your manufacturing process is up to spec. If it's not, they can close that down right there on the spot. So to recap, going from bench science to basically getting reimbursed for your technology, first of all, you need to have industry support or NIH support to get the basic research done. That basic science will yield an innovative material or missing link for some therapeutic or diagnostic value. That new product then needs to be developed either within a firm or at least supported by a firm. A prototype needs to be developed. The prototype is then used for some clinical trials. If that prototype is successful in human trials, cost-effectiveness analysis are commissioned to make sure that the argument to the insurance companies makes some sense. Successful human trials are going to lead to FDA approval combined with a good cost-effectiveness analysis. That's the type of criteria required to get paid for by Medicare, Medicaid, and the private insurers. Once that technology is added to reimbursement schedule, it's subject to other internal auditors, make sure the technology is still effective even if it's on the market. And if Medicare does reimburse your technology right off the mark, that's often a signal to all the other insurers for a positive reimbursement decision. So here's a thought question that I have that really sort of bleeds into the, if you will, Module 4.2.4, really important question, which is technological change worth it? It costs a lot of money. It's one of the things that actually drives a lot of the healthcare costs in the system today. And so here's the question I want you to ask and actually make a calculation on. How much would you be willing to pay every day from this day forward for a better than 50% chance, it's better than a coin flip, that you will live 5 more years than without such an investment? Now, I get the question a lot when I present this to my students, and they say 5 more years, like at the end of life, like in the middle of life, just 5 more years. So, average life expectancy right now is somewhere between 75 to 80. This is basically going to push you up 5 years, but it's a 50% chance you're going to get pushed that additional 5 years. How much are you willing to pay every day? Is it a dime? Is it a nickel? Is it a dollar? Some of it depends on, what your personal preference is. You might call it zero. You really don't care. But put that together, add a number in, and let's see what the results are. This concludes this module in the FDA process for pharma, and also looking for the value of technology as it goes to market.